including a 25-kilometer secure buffer zone around the site. So, Arvy, what's your thoughts about the in-country security in Mozambique? You've been there quite a bit, so just kind of share with the audience about your thoughts.
I think, look, I was actually very fortunate enough to work for the Mozambique Rovuma Basin last year. Exxon was the client, and I was actually working for Fluor. Now, what ends up happening is you end up looking at things when you step out of the company itself and you look at the security measures, and you actually realize how dangerous the area actually is. And even when we were, going through the feed contracts, security measures, it's always going to be number one on any company's agenda because of the amount of, workforce, international workforce involved.
This is West Africa Weekly, a live series brought to you by Lynx and Arvy Nahar, where we talk about oil and gas news, projects, and developments that you can sink your teeth into. Here are your hosts, Greg and Arvy. Hey, Arvy.
Hey, Greg, how are you?
Right as rain.
Super. Is it too bright? Can you see me there? Okay, is it too bright for you? Is it all right?
No, it's perfect. It's perfect.
Super.
Let's see here. So where are you located now? You were saying right before we came on?
So I'm currently still in Angola. I'm in Luanda just now.
Okay.
I've been here for a couple of weeks. I don't actually know when I'm going to be leaving. So the project that I was involved in here is going, touch wood, it's going very well. So I'm hoping to get back out of here in a couple of weeks, and then I'll head back to Nigeria.
Excellent. So let's go ahead and get our rundown up. All right. So if you're just joining the show, welcome. Let's see. Yeah, we've got a few people on. So this is West Africa Weekly, where myself and Arvy, we go through some things that are happening in West Africa and basically the entire region. But when we picked the show name, it was kind of based around a lot of things that were going on at that time. But it seems like we've expanded the conversation to more than just West Africa. So we'll talk about the oil prices. Total getting restarted in Mozambique. Nigeria's 1.5 billion refinery restoration. E&I is asking to go ahead and pay this 14 million to settle the Congo suit, and Sparrows lands 3 contracts in Angola. So, Arvy, for the oil prices, the WTI is looks like it's around $59, and the Brent looks like it's around $62.46. And of course, right before we were coming on, we were talking about the a little bit of the stuff that was happening in the Suez Canal, but that's about the largest change that I've seen here recently with the prices, other than, of course, last week's drop.
Sure. I don't know what so last time I checked was early this morning before I left my hotel, but what's the actual current development with the Suez Canal and the vessel?
I think
what's the update?
From the photos that I've been sent, it looks like they've gotten partially looks like the front of the vessel. They're working on trying to remove it from ground, so you can only see kind of what's above the water level, so you can't really see what's below. So you don't actually know. I'm not a marine expert, but I don't actually know how much of the hull is actually grounded. But it's a massive container ship. I mean, it's
Cool.
I think it was something like 1,500 feet long, and it's huge. It's huge. I saw some photos with some dozers and some vehicles and some different things next to it, and it just seemed like it was just a massive job to get that thing moving. So.
Mhm. Yeah, the last thing I read before I left this morning was the fact that they were looking to engage with some dredging contractors locally. So I don't really know. I just feel so sorry for the captain. So as we were talking, I was like, I wonder what's going on in his mind. Wow, unbelievable.
I can imagine.
Nightmare.
Exactly. Welcome to the show, Ken. Yeah, exactly. I can't even begin to fathom the what was going on inside of his mind when all that was taking place. I did read somewhere that that there was pilots whenever they come into the Suez Canal. And someone can correct me in the comments if this is not right, but I was reading that there's actual pilots that take over control of the vessels whenever they come through. So I'm not sure about where there's going to be liability or anything like that. I'm not sure about how that's all going to play out, but I do know that right now there is a 1,500-foot cargo container ship sideways in the Suez Canal, which I would have never thought would have ever happened.
Yeah. And actually, some of the I've had a look at drone pictures that people have taken. It just looks like an absolute nightmare because you can actually see there's no movement for the. It's just it's some of the pictures are just unbelievable. And even if you look at it, you think, okay, even if they get some of the contractors in to start dredging and some of the excavators in to start lifting up the soil, you don't actually know, like you've said, how deep the vessel is actually stuck. So it's it's going to be a bit of a difficult one, but let's see.
I mean, the automated maps that I was watching of the marine traffic going into the canal and then coming out of the canal you could just see hundreds and hundreds of vessels going in and during that period of time and turning around and heading back out. It's just, you can imagine the stoppage there and what surplus comes through the Suez Canal. We actually don't think about the volume that trades through there, but I can imagine that it's quite substantial.
Yeah, and I think this morning's coverage was they were estimating how much billions of dollars of trade, what the effect it's had on global trade over the last 48 hours. So I guess there's a panic now to get this issue resolved as soon as possible.
Here we are thinking about all of the alternative energies and everything else, and it sounds like we need to be thinking about another way around somewhere. The bigger picture.
Yeah. You're right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I hear you.
Well, Arvy, it looks like we've got some people in from Algeria, the UK, back in Oklahoma in the US. And welcome to the show, everybody. All right, so we'll move on to Total and their restart in Mozambique. So Arvy, Total will restart construction at its 20 billion liquefied or LNG development in Mozambique after the government increased security. They said that this past Wednesday, or yesterday rather. But in January, Total withdrew most of its workforce from the sites in Mozambique. We discussed it here on the show. But it was due to some of the northernmost province of Cabo Delgado, where the site is, but seems like there was some insurgency. But the company asked the government for additional security measures, including a 25-kilometer secure buffer zone around the site. So, Arvy, what's your thoughts about the in-country security in Mozambique? You've been there quite a bit, so just kind of share with the audience about your thoughts.
I think, look, I was actually very fortunate enough to work for the Mozambique Rovuma Basin last year. Exxon was the client, and I was actually working for Fluor. Now, what ends up happening is you end up looking at things when you step out of the company itself and you look at the security measures, and you actually realize how dangerous the area actually is. And even when we were, going through the feed contracts, security measures, it's always going to be number one on any company's agenda because of the amount of, workforce, international workforce involved. And I think that, work has to commence, and this is where the government have to support IOCs and any kind of even their local operators, they need to support what's going on in country, because without having the relevant security in place, it's a domino effect. Without having the security in place, the IOCs can't come and work, and without the IOCs can't come into work, development doesn't commence for the project. So it's a very difficult situation for any company and for any country when there's such a high level of threat. So I think it's a good thing that Total took measures when they did in January. But now, they must have got some sort of support for them to commence work, or them to start to look at getting back to work anyway. So that's my thoughts on it.
Certainly. Alexander, you're right. The security measures are great until they're overwhelmed. But I mean, the idea there is that they've gotten support, hopefully, from the government there, and they will step in and hopefully, if there is an increase there, they will also increase as well. So maybe Total can keep their operations up and going.
Sure.
All right. Here for our next one. This one wasn't a surprise to see, but good. It was good to see that they're putting some money back in it. But here, Nigeria is voted in a 1.5 billion rehab plan for the Port Harcourt Refinery. Nigeria's Federal Executive Council has approved the 1.5 billion rehabilitation for the Port Harcourt Refinery, with funding derived from the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation. It's internationally generated revenue, so coming directly from inside of Nigeria. But the minister also noted that the federal government would see to the rehabilitation of the Warri and Kaduna refineries before the end of the current administration. So, Arvy, whenever I was first looking over this, I was thinking about time frame. And these administrations last for a while. Do you think they will be able to actually get all three completed under the current administration?
To be honest with you, I'm always very optimistic about Nigeria, maybe because I work there and I was actually at the refinery about 6-7 weeks ago. I think why I remain optimistic is because Nigeria as a country for oil and gas production it's always at the focal point for everybody's discussion. So with regards to, on the political side of things and term time, and yes, are they looking to support all three refineries in country and make sure that the contracts are executed? I think there's always going to be a vested interest that they try to do the best they can with delivery. But I'm thinking that, Port Harcourt and the refinery and the plans that they've got, I think is a very good start. Because as we discussed last week, Nigeria is very active in the oil and gas industry right now, especially with the MOUs they've signed with Morocco. You've got the LNG Train 7 and now the Port Harcourt refinery. So I think there's a lot of development work going on, which always brings a media spotlight on the country. So I personally think that they are going to do their best to deliver on these projects.
It's also interesting that there was no mention of outside financial support for this rehabilitation plan. So that means that their in-country financial forecast has been planned over the next 5 to 10 years, and they've slotted this in there. So that means that is going to be taken care of internally. So no outside funding.
Sure. Yeah, which also, again, shows the strength and credibility of in-country support as well when you have an agenda like that,
Exactly, with the continued work. So there's revenue coming in.
Sure. Yep.
All right. So we'll move over here to talk about E&I and the request to pay the $14 million, which this morning actually, or late yesterday afternoon. It looks like the judge there in Italy agreed to the payment. But E&I is requesting to pay a U.S. $14 million to settle investigation in Congo suit. So the Italian energy group E&I said it had filed a request with prosecutors in Milan to pay the 11.8 million euros, approximately 14 million US, to settle an investigation into oil permits in the Congo Republic. So they further said E&I wish to note that the deal does not represent an admission of guilt by the company in relation to the alleged offense, but an initiative aimed at avoiding the continuation of the judicial process, it added. But settling a criminal case in Italy does not involve any admission of guilt or responsibility. So, Arvy, it's not uncommon these days to see these kind of settlements and cases kind of work themselves out. But same with Shell, like we previously talked about in Angola. E&I has been in Congo for a long time. So do you see this kind of damaging any of the future relationships in country?
I don't see it damaging any relationships. I'll tell you why, because it's a sometimes people lose sight of the bigger picture here and the bigger development plans. I mean, okay, in hindsight, yes, it's a lot of money, and yes, the court case may be valid, it may be not. But the issue is that there's a long-standing relationship here with E&I in country. Now, are they going to fall out of favor and fall out of love for $14 million? I don't think so. I think that there's going to be a very good arbitration cycle that they'll probably go through and settle what they need to settle. But I always think when cases like this, like with Shell, that we discussed a couple of weeks back, I think it's always good to actually review, have a look at the story a little closer to what you see in the media as well. Because I think it's always easy to go after the big corporations and, hold them accountable. But, let's look at what actually happened in the first place in country. So I'm always in the favor of looking at things just at a deeper level. And sometimes, these highlights of these reports sometimes miss out some key critical information that people need to digest before they make an opinion, form an opinion, should I say. So I don't think it's going to damage the relationship in country. I think that hopefully the government will see that, there's a long-standing relationship and commitment with E&I. So both sides, whether in Italy and in Congo, they will do the best they can, I think, to settle this as soon as possible.
No, certainly. I think same like you said just now. I mean, we discussed about Shell last week. It's also how much infrastructure that has been put in place, as well as local content, training, and everything else that's happened over the last 30 or 40 years, maybe even 50 years. I think I'd have to go look back. I think E&I first came in late 60s, I think, in the Congo. But there's been massive amounts of work take place there.
There are, yeah.
Moving over here to our last piece of the show. What we typically do is any kind of new contract work or anything that comes up, Arvy and I like to discuss, whatever part of Africa it's in, because it means there's some growing interest. It means that there's continued business in the region. So yeah, it's overall good for the entire industry whenever there's even the smallest announcements, like Sparrows here. Sparrows lands these 3 contracts in Angola. We like to highlight these, like I said, but the future is what we want to try to focus on, and what's coming for the future, because that allows you as a viewer and someone that watches the show to know what's going on in that region with potential work that you can share with anyone else, or planning for the future, or whatever it may be. But Sparrows has secured 1 contract renewal and 2 extensions worth a 7-figure sum in Angola to support major operators in the deep water region. And again, key there was deep water, which I was glad to see as well. The first award is 3-year renewal to continue with the planned corrective maintenance of all lifting gear used on 4 FPSOs. So again, Arvy, that was a big contract for Sparrows. They've been in there for a while. I think, by the way, congrats to Sparrows on winning the tender. But they've been in there for a long time, I think 30 years, but good relationships and customer service lead to add-on work, doesn't it?
I think, I mean, I'm in Angola at the moment, Greg, and upon arrival, I didn't actually really appreciate the level of complexities of oil and gas work in Angola, in Luanda. But what I was really, I've been in some meetings. So the focal point for me in Angola is to look at local content agenda for the oil and gas industry. And what you'll find is there's a layer of activity in Luanda that is so buoyant. It's very active. And usually it's actually majority of the contracts are on the EPC side of things. So, you know, engineering is really critical here. And a lot of the companies that have been in the region, like you've stated, have been here for years, like, you know, longer than 15 years plus. So I'm very excited to mention the fact that, you know, Angola for me is, you know, it's very personal for me because I started my career for BP Angola many years ago. So I spoke about this on LinkedIn this week. And so when you come back and you look at the landscape of oil and gas activity, you know, and you realize that there actually is so much work here. There's so much development work going on. And what's really great to see here is that the local content agenda is very strong. So there's a large portion of the work that is actually you know, assigned to local contractors, whether it be on the engineering side, technical side, project management side of things. So I'm very happy that Sparrows have landed these 3 contracts, and even folks like Sparrow, you know, they would have had to go through a very tough contract negotiation to make sure that they do meet local content quotas. As of this year, beginning of last year and this year was when the government actually issued a new local content directive. So it's a bit tougher than the last legal directive that was passed, but a lot of local companies as well as IOCs have signed up to the agenda. So it's really encouraging to see companies like Sparrow that have won 3 contracts, because you know you're certain that companies like Sparrow would have gone through a very stringent, very kind of tough contract negotiation to land these contracts. So yeah, pretty impressed with what's going on in Angola.
That's great. I mean, just if anyone out there has ever had to deal with any Ministry of Hydrocarbon on any inspections or any, like once a quarter, they'll come around to your office spaces. They will speak with your employees. They'll go through your documentation. They will go through your bank accounts. They will go through just about everything, auditing you, you know, on a quarterly process. And, you know, regardless of, you know, what you think your relationship may be in country with them, if the documentation is not there and the documentation cannot be provided, you will be fined. There is no, whether or not how you want to talk about that or how you want to try to negotiate that down the road, but you will be fined. So it is important to, you know, when you come to the table with these these tendering exercises, that you treat them like the real thing, because they are.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a good point, Greg, you know, because they are, a lot of people, you know, sometimes have the assumption that it's very easy to walk in and get a contract. It's absolutely not. It's very tough, very tough. And especially now because of COVID, you know, and especially now because of COVID, because large companies are looking at commercial optimization. So it's even tougher, you know, the pool of selecting the few is getting smaller. But yeah, good point, Greg.
That's absolutely right. I mean, all of the new, medical plans and all the new quarantine measures put into place, as well as fatigue management, even, you know, classing societies such as Bahamas and, some of the others, as well as DNV and ABS. You know, there's some large focus on fatigue and fatigue management of your crews. And so that's a lot going into some of the new tenders out there, because it doesn't look like COVID's going to go away, you know, so it's, it's there.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely.
Well, we'll see if we have any comments there. Yeah, Alexander, we'll put this one up there real quick, but yeah, you're right. It does have a plethora of oil and gas, and I mean, you have to look at it from a perspective, and I'm sure that you understand that even whenever there's especially a conversation about whether it's corruption or whether it's government officials or anything like that, it seems to be, just like Arvy and I discussed, I think it was 2 shows back, it seems to be getting better. It seems to be they're identifying these loopholes. They're identifying these holes and processes. The younger generation of the oil and gas ministries that are coming up in country are different, in the case where they want to make sure that, that they have longevity for their next 50, 60, 70 years in the industry. So they're not wanting to get started on a bad foot. So a lot of those kind of torches are being passed over and changed from different, government officials and different people in countries. So I think we're seeing a tide change here, Arvy, with some of these countries.
I think you're right, and you're spot on, Greg. But also with the question about corruption and things like that, corruption's not exclusive to Nigeria. It's not exclusive to Africa. It happens all over the world, So it's all about having provisions in place and the legal structure in place to actually minimize all this kind of nonsense that goes on. But like you said, Greg, it's a tire change. It's a bit like a tire change. There's a lot of stuff going on that I think is going to support.
Speaking of tire changes, the container ship is not moving out of the Suez Canal with a tide change. So,
yeah. That's another thing. Yeah, it's going to take a lot more.
Absolutely. So it looks like that's it for us this week, Arvy. So so everybody, thanks for coming to the show. I think Arvy and I may be announcing something, maybe next week or week after about some other adventures we may take, but on digital space. But yeah, it was great. It was great, Arvy. Great catching up with you as always. And hey, everybody out there, have a great weekend and take care.
Thank you, guys. See you, Greg. Speak to you soon.
Absolutely.
Bye.
You've been watching West Africa Weekly, a live series brought to you by Lynx and Arvy Nahar. Your hosts have been Greg and Arvy. For sponsorship opportunities, send us an email at info@riglynx.com. Tune in next Thursday at 8 a.m. CST for another live episode.